A few years ago, a leading Colgate executive and his team had developed a new best-in-class fluoride that they were meshing into their toothpaste. They had spent months and months developing this fluoride, and they knew that it would be a breakthrough on the market. But there was a mechanical flow problem, and the fluoride was getting stuck in the equipment. It wasn't meshing well, and all the chemists internally were trying to figure out why. So after months and months of the best chemists inside Colgate trying to figure it out, no one could solve this problem. At that point, the executive decided that they needed to ask a different question. They needed to ask, who else could help us outside of our go-to experts? Who else could help us solve this problem? So they posted the fluoride challenge on a website called Innocentive. Innocentive is an online community where scientists around the world come together to help large companies, including many pharmaceutical life sciences companies that are in this room, solve scientific challenges. And within just 2 days of posting the challenge on the website, a physicist named Ed Melkerick, shared up here, who lives in Canada, looked at the problem and he said, this isn't a chemistry problem. It's a physics problem. It's about charged particles. He charged the fluoride one way, the toothpaste the other. Instantly, the problem was solved. Colgate learned a few things from this story. The first thing they learned is that they didn't even dare to ask the physicists at their own company because they thought of it as a chemistry problem. The second thing they realized is that the physicist that solved the problem would have never been hired by Colgate. He had had odd jobs throughout his life and didn't have the traditional resume. So they realized that by using their networks differently, they could access and engage expertise far outside their own. So the first question I want you all to think about today is, how do you keep learning from networks outside of your own, from networks outside of your usual go-to suspects? And how do you design your questions differently so that they're not just going to those usual experts, but they're designed in a way where others, people that you may not know, could help you solve that problem? This is Jeannie Pieper. When Jeannie Pieper was 4 years old, she was diagnosed with a very rare disease called FOB. To give you a sense, there were only 2 research papers in the entire 20th century on this disease. And she spent 20 years in her youth scouring from doctor to doctor on how to better diagnose and treat her illness. It was in her early 20s that she met one doctor named Dr. Michael Zaslow, who had seen 18 patients over his lifetime that had this disease and developed an interest in it, something that she didn't find from any other doctor she had met. And when Jeannie learned about this, she asked a different question. She asked, what if I connected all of these patients that had gone through the same challenges as me for so long? So she started one by one, handwriting letters to every patient that she could connect to. Then she created an email community, which was for the first time ever these patients coming together. Then it was a Facebook group. Today, it is a real-time knowledge network where patients with FOB around the world, everywhere from Saudi Arabia to St. Louis to San Francisco, are sharing expertise, are sharing symptoms, issues, relief, preventative mechanisms. And one of the best things is that now doctors are going to this real-time knowledge community that was created and led by patients to learn how to better diagnose and treat FOB. So not only has it become a support group for patients, but it turned into a real-time expertise network. Not only does the story stop there, actually today, the first ever medical research has now been funded out of this connected network at the University of Pennsylvania. And Jeannie Pieper's rare disease community has become a model for rare disease patient communities around the world. So the second question I want all of you to think about is, how do you leverage your current existing networks? While they may be used to solve one problem, which is why they came together, what other problems could they solve? When Jeannie connected this network, she started it for emotional support and connection. But it was able to turn into a systematic way to help patients, researchers, doctors, and universities to come together around this illness. The third story I want to share is about Duolingo. Who here has used Duolingo? Raise your hand if you have. All right, a lot of Duolingo users. Duolingo is a free language learning application. Basically, you download it on your mobile app and you can learn any language by playing games. And while it's a language learning platform, it also serves another purpose for another network at the exact same time. While it's a language learning platform, it's also a crowdsourced text translation service. So let me explain. The founder of Duolingo is a man named Luis von Ahn, and he always asks the question, how could we leverage one network for one reason and solve another problem for a different network at the exact same time by bringing them together? So one problem he saw is that people around the world needed a better way to learn languages for free. So he created this free mobile app where you can play games, say English to French, to learn languages. But the other problem he saw was that news websites around the world needed a quicker way to translate their news website article blogs into different languages. So he brought the problems together. So when players play Duolingo, when you get to, say, the advanced level learning French, you are no longer translating random sentences. You are translating news website articles of companies like BuzzFeed, CNN, PBS, and beyond. So there's an algorithm where an aggregate amount of people can translate sites around the world. So the third question I want to ask you is, are you truly maximizing the full potential of your networks? If you think about the people and resources that you're a part of, what other problems could they solve when connected in new ways? So I wanted to start with these stories to really have us think about this question of where are we today, right? In our connected world, what these stories have taught us is that it's not just about the individual anymore, and it's not just about the institution. It's about the collective. It's about making anyone in the world accountable. So I want you to think for a minute about what are you accountable for? Your team, your direct reports, your business unit. Now I want you to think about everyone else. How could you leverage anyone else to get the big things done you're trying to achieve? The job of 20th century leaders were those that were able to spread accountability, oftentimes within their team or their business unit. But the job of 21st century leaders will be those that will be able to spread accountability much farther to networks outside their usual suspects, to networks of physicists, patients, doctors, language learners, and far beyond. And so the key question I want to talk about today is how do we spread accountability? How do we enable and maximize the full potential of our networks? Well, the answer is through the power of connectional intelligence. Connectional intelligence is the capability to consistently drive breakthrough innovation and business results by fully harnessing the power of our networks and relationships. We've all heard of IQ as basic knowledge. 15 years ago, emotional intelligence came to stage as a key leadership trait for leaders. But in today's world, when we're over-connected, when we're not always in a room with someone to manage their emotions, we can't just rely on what we know or how we manage emotions with them. We need to maximize our connectional intelligence wherever we are at any point in our career. So 10 years ago, a famous author named Malcolm Gladwell coined the concept of a connector. You may have heard of that concept. It's one of the three people he describes creates the rise of social epidemics. And while that idea revolutionized many leaders' thinking, what we've realized is that in today's world, that idea is quite outdated because we are all connected. In fact, we are over-connected. So it's not about more connections. It's about how do we connect intelligently with everything that we have access to. And what I found in my research is that there are actually three types of connectors today: the thinkers, the enablers, and the connection executors. The thinkers are your idea connectors. This is the Colgate executive that said, why don't we ask a different network outside of our own, which was not a usual thing for Colgate to do. The enablers are the people-based connectors. This is Jeannie Pieper understanding that if she connected other patients that had her disease, it could lead to some unimaginable change. And the third type are the connection executors. These are the people that are helping to mobilize and ignite networks in a new way. These are the Duolingo users that are playing a game to learn languages and translating news websites at the exact same time. So I want you to take a moment to think about, where are you among these? Are you a thinker, enabler, or connection executor? And how are you designing your teams so you're fully leveraging all the different types of collaboration that we have in today's world? Underneath the 3 types of connectors, we also have what we call the 5 C's of connectional intelligence, and I'll go through them really quickly. Curiosity. Curiosity is not just about asking great questions. It's about how well are you designing your questions so that other people you don't know can help. Combination. How well do you combine very different groups in people, patients, doctors, language learners, and translation services together so that 2 problems could be solved at once? Community. How do you leverage your communities outside what their usual purpose is, just like the patient community? Courage. How do you design ways so that teams are taking risks? Do you bring your thinkers and connection executors together? And lastly, combustion. How well do you ignite and mobilize your networks to create the game-changing power of all the networks you have access to? So in good spirit, in my 10-minute talk, I have 3 things that I want you to do to kick off and jumpstart your connectional intelligence. The first is we have a little giveaway that you can get by your mobile phone. If you open your mobile phone and you text the number 66866 with my name in the text message, Erica, E-R-I-C-A, you'll get a quick link to a connectional intelligence assessment where you can measure your CQ and understand and identify what type of connector are you. Are you a thinker, enabler, or a connection executor? So that you can begin to think about how well do you make sure you're collaborating with people that connect differently than you. The second to do is what I call the 10-minute rule. It's to spend 10 minutes every day, put it on your calendar, connecting with a new source of expertise outside of your usual inputs. So if you're opening up your email inbox or you're reading the local newspaper, how could you use 10 minutes differently? Connecting to a new innocentive challenge, a website, a Twitter hashtag that might connect to a passion, interest, or meaningful work that you have going on in your organization. And the third thing is once you identify what type of connector you are, build your own circle. So if you realize that you're a thinker, I want you to have 2 conversations a month with the enabler and the executor on your team, in a different team, and ask them how they would solve a problem that you're facing. You'd be surprised that some of our greatest sources of help are where we least expect them. We just have to be courageous enough to ask. So as I close, one of the things I wanted to share is my own journey in connectional intelligence. I worked in finance. I completely switched gears and became a researcher at Harvard, and now have spent the last series of years helping organizations maximize and measure collaboration the same way we measure ROI on any business function. But one of the things I also realized is being courageous and curious and connected also involves living it in our day-to-day lives. And part of my own challenge with that is getting on stage and speaking to large groups to share the mission around connectional intelligence. But I've always gone back to some of my personal passions, and I truly believe that connectional intelligence is not just about who we are at work, it's also about what makes us authentic and what we can bring to our workplace. One of my favorite passions growing up in an Indian American family is Bollywood dance. I grew up as a Bollywood dancer, and it always gave me the curiosity to take risks, the community building, the courage, the combustion of the movement. And in the spirit of asking you all to think about how could we unleash our connectional intelligence in this room with all of our wisdom, our creativity, and our heart, I'd like to close this quick Spark Talk by asking everyone to stand up right now. Stand up, and I'd love to share a short Bollywood move. I'd love everyone to do a move with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now make a circle and have some fun.
Tu hogi 1 to 2, oh kudiye what to do, oh ho gayi munde di.